My name is David, and you're listening to Papstinenser.
Så er det igen blevet tid til at byde velkommen til Papstinenser, din podcast om brætspil. Din studievært er Christian Bak-Petersen.
Velkommen til 4. sæson af Papstinenser, en podcast om moderne bræt- og kortspil, præsenteret i samarbejde med papskov.dk, hvor du kan finde nyheder, anmeldelser, artikler og anbefalinger, alt sammen om brætspil. Mit navn er Christian Bak-Petersen, og I skal kun høre på mig ganske kort, fordi vi har haft sendt producer Bo i byen for at lave et nyt interview. Og jeg siger, vi teasede allerede lidt for det her interview for et par uger siden, da vi lavede podcast om Imperium Classics særligt, hvor vi ligesom hintede, at vi havde fået et interview lined op med designeren Dávid Turczi. Det, I skal høre nu. Producer Bo har snakket med den Mortens favoritdesigner lige nu, Dávid Turczi. Skal vi høre, hvad Bo og David snakkede om?
Hey David, it's Bo. How you doing?
Hello, good to be here.
Good to have you, David.
It's been a long day, but it's always nice to cap it off with some fun chat.
We were just talking about your the different games that you have designed for us, not personally for us, but in a way for us. I can't remember, David. Actually, let me stop by that. Did you make it to Essen this year?
Yes, I
Yes.
did, definitely. It was.
Did you have a good trip?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Essen is mostly partly the industry networking and partly just keeping in touch with the fans and the enthusiasm when I can get to talk with, backers coming to see Voidfall or somebody trying out Vengeance Roll and Fight and going, "Ooh, I get it, this is fun."
Yeah.
So it's those moments, and I always joke that publishers like having me around because I'm a natural, shameless salesperson. I can endlessly talk about why our stuff is the most genius thing ever, but I do it because I'm enthusiastic and I love it, and I love to share that joy, and I want to find a way for that other person to feel as enthusiastic about it as I do, and when it clicks, that's like, yay! So Essen is my victory lap, essentially. So yes, it's always a good trip to go. These days you can't get away from the con without picking up some nasty germs, but I'm now on the recovering edge. So
You're in the recovery phase from this year's Essen.
yeah. Yes.
Did you have a lot of official obligations there, or were you there more privately?
I hang out with my publishers. This year it was mostly with Mind Clash because they were demoing Voidfall. The pledge manager is closing tomorrow, so but depends on when you're broadcasting it. It might have closed yesterday.
Yeah.
So we were showing that off, and I was hanging out with Mighty Boards because, as I mentioned, the Vengeance Roll and Fight landed this year, and with Board and Dice because they had the expansion for Tawantinsu. So yeah, I go there to, again, besides the business to business networking, I go there to be next to my games so that when people come to check out my games, I can engage with them because that's the fun part.
Yeah.
So.
And perhaps we should really start there by you shamelessly clapping yourself on the shoulders. Your list is long. I have your profile on Board Game Geek here in front of me.
I need it too because I forget them all the time. Because
I can send you the link.
The games I'm thinking about are my 2025 releases that I'm not allowed to tell you. So
exactly, yeah. There is a veil of what can you tell us. Of course, I would like you to forget all about that and just ramble on. Sure.
Oh, I know what little droplets on the right. It's not my first rodeo.
But I could start the list by saying I know you from, and then I could come up with a couple of titles. But
well, what do you know me from?
I picked up your name when playing Imperium Classics.
Excellent choice.
And I haven't played Legends yet, but going through a game of Imperium Classics, and we've just for your understanding, we have touched on the Imperium games on the podcast. So at least we have applauded you for those games.
Very important for Imperium. Most of the upload should go to Nigel because he is the silent figure floating in the background while I'm the loud face appearing everywhere. But actually, on both Imperium and Voidfall, he's the lead designer, and I'm just the guy who finished the things. So, but I usually work in a team, and other people tend to be okay with me being the loud one. So, thank you. I'll take the praise, but I want your listeners to know that Nigel is the real genius behind Imperium.
But I think we have seen throughout board gaming history a lot of successful partnerships, and not all people get energy from the same. So if you're the loudmouthed, the talking and the extrovert person of the two of you, and that works, then please continue.
Yeah, it's with Nigel. It's definitely fire and ice, and I absolutely love it because I'm like, I didn't sleep last night, so I designed 20 new things. And Nigel is like, "Oh God, what have you done again?"
And how did you two end up creating games together?
How did we end up creating games together?
From where do you know him? Is he?
I used to live in London, and he lives south of London, and he had a few games published long time ago. Most notably, Omega Centauri, which is like less random, more knife fight in a phone booth kind of Eclipse-like experience, which I have always thought was my favorite Space 4X, if anybody asked. And then I had my first game published, and then because we were roughly in the same board gaming circles, it's like, "Ooh, you're the other designer here. Wow, it's so nice to be quote unquote famous." And then we swapped our games, and that's that. And then years later, when I was working with Board and Dice back then called NSKN, then they had an early prototype for Imperium, which Nigel submitted to them. Yeah. And I was like, shotgun, I want to be the dev lead on that project.
Yeah.
And I ended up being a lot more than dev lead on that project. I ended up doing a top 20% redesign of the game. Then I gave Nigel the idea on how to make the solo mode, which he then proceeded to do 16 unit bots for the 16 civilizations.
Yeah.
Then with some of the more complex civilizations, I sparked the ideas. And now with the sequel, Imperium Horizons, which we just announced, now I'm fully co-designing it with him, and I'm churning out the cards too. And I always joke that I fell in love with Imperium after I worked on it.
Right.
It's like it started out as a job, and then now it's my absolute passion. So it's a strange story, but here I am.
Back to the beginning. You were about to introduce from where do we know you? I mean, we can.
Yes, sure. It's like a Christopher Nolan movie. You will get the story in reverse time order. I will end this interview with, "Hi, I'm David. Nice to meet you."
We'll end up with that. I can say Imperium Classics caught my attention. And then you've already mentioned Voidfall, which is a Kickstarter coming out.
Yes, the Kickstarter was last September, and it's going to be shipping late spring, early summer next year.
23, yeah.
Yeah, but the rules are finished. Now it's heading off to production.
Cool. But there's a lot more games on your list. So
I would say to this day, most people probably know me from Anachrony. Because it is the highest rated of my stuff on BGG. It is one of my earliest games, so it's been out the longest. I always say I had one unique thing and then got very lucky with it, and then I could do all those cool things because fame opens doors, and I was allowed to learn and experiment and work with cool people. I met the Victor and Richard, the founders of Mindclash Games, before their first Kickstarter campaign. Tricarium was their first game, and at that time I had my first game, Redacted, come out, which is not even a Euro game based on what I know now about game design. It was a very amateurish attempt. It was a good try, but it was very first steps, but it was our team, the redacted team. We were the first internationally published Hungarian designers.
Yeah.
So, and Mindclash is from Hungary. So when they were starting out, they were like, "Hey, you guys are the big famous published designers. Come check the game out." And I went and played Vicarian, and I went, "Holy crap, this is better than some of my favorite games. Why are you asking for my advice? Can I come work for you instead?"
Yeah.
And then they played my prototype for Anachrony, and they were like, "Cool, we love it. Can we redesign this and that in that? And also, could the theme be something more exciting? So how about the half of the planet getting destroyed?"
Wow.
And that's how the story of Anachrony started. And Anachrony made it to Kickstarter a few years later. And by the end of 2017, it was in BGG top 50.
Yeah.
And that was only my third or fourth game published ever. So there I was on the top of the world out of nowhere. And I tend to say that I learned how to be a good game designer after this. because suddenly I was the guy who did Anachrony, so I could sit down and talk. Suddenly I could have a chat with people like Daniel Tascini or Vlada Shvatil or Richard Breeze or Martin Wallace. Like a year earlier, I was queuing up for their autograph. So it was a very different situation.
Overwhelming, I can imagine.
It took me a year or two to get the out of my system, the fangirlish screams, but yeah, definitely, because I'm very much a talker and a team worker. Like I solve problems by talking about it with other people.
Yeah.
So that allowed me to be very flexible in my style. So I went and designed Daniel Tascini-like games with Daniel Tascini. Then I went and designed Richard Breeze-style games with Richard Breeze. And then I went and designed Martin Wallace-style games with Martin Wallace. And I can go to all of these people and be the other guy in the room.
Yeah.
And that's something that none of them can do. Like, Vital Lacerda is lovely, but every game he designs, he'll design them like Vital Lacerda.
Yeah.
And then Daniel Tascini, every game he designs, he'll design them like Daniel Tascini. And whereas I can always wear the other hat. So I'm okay not being the lead designer. Like I'm not even the lead designer on 60% of my game, because that's not my job. My job is to make something shine in a way that it couldn't have before.
Actually crunch it through, yeah.
Which is why it was really exciting for me. It's going to get announced in a few months, hopefully.
Yeah.
Next year's big Euro, I have been dropping hints about it online, is a co-design with Simone Luciani. And Simone is also one of these making games shine kind of person who's also a team player and also doesn't have to be in the lead all the time. So this time, for the first time since I made it to the big leagues, I was the one charging. I was the one with the big idea, and Simone was making me sparkle. So, which obviously made the end product like a personal triumph for me. So I have really high hopes about that game.
So between board game designers, are there a point in the meeting where you go, so who is John Lennon and who's McCartney here? I mean,
well, those two swapped, whereas I swap between partnerships. I tend to not swap in a partnership.
Yeah.
Well, maybe with Victor Peter, the head of Mindclash Games, he and I are he's the only one whom I can swap with within a partnership, because on some games I'm the designer and he's the publisher's developer.
No, but I can clearly see that you coming into a new designer, as you were saying, you would have lined up or queued up for Vlada's autograph a few years later. There must be a hierarchy coming into a co-designship like that.
Not necessarily. Everybody has different styles, and which is why some people say, "Oh, I never co-design," because they haven't worked out these interfaces yet.
Right.
Whereas I'm just, let's talk about it. Whatever, we'll deal with it. So I'm a very all interfaces kind of person. probably because I talk so much that I talk until I fit into the interface.
Yeah.
And it also helped that one of the guys I met, because both of our first game was published at the same time at the same small publisher, Dave Kirkhope, who became one of my best friends ever, then he started his own publisher. So then I was like, every few years, I was like, okay, let's go back to you. Let's make a game together. And he published some of my stuff. Then I developed some of his stuff, which also got published. Petrichor was one of his, which I did first just the solo mode, but then the expansions we did together. This year he made it huge with Hamlet, and for me it was like, he's so grown up now. It's like, I gave him a few tips, but like I kept my name far from that box because I wanted it to be his success, because I had nothing to do with it on that level.
Hamlet was actually one of my Essen pickups this year.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So I do have these regular people, again, mostly at Mindclash and Mighty Boards, but I thrive on work and now Nigel, but I do thrive on talking to people who have very well developed viewpoints, and because I can bring in a new viewpoint, make their really, really good stuff a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because I already think that they're the best, and if I can make their stuff better, then by definition it has to be the bestest. So and that's how the expansion for Tricarion came around when I did it with Mindclash. That's how, Tekkenu famously was designed in a matter of few days, because Tashini and me in a room was like, here's an idea. Okay, this is how we use it. Okay, this is how it's interacting. Okay, this is how we score it. Okay, this is how you get tech up. Okay, let's play. Change that one thing. Let's play again. Okay, done. Publisher. Sign it, publish it. So it's like, sure, that's a little bit exaggeration. They still have to
the fast version,
But like the version we had on the fourth day's morning, and the published game is like 85-90% the same. So it's like,
wow,
the next 6 months of development changed the top 10%. So
right.
It's I love those fire moments. So
of course
I live for those.
How, if I may ask you, David, do you get a balance of Imperium classics? How do you achieve the balance of a complex game like that? Well,
for classics, that was mostly Nigel, and it was mostly Nigel playing the game over and over again and adjusting. And retroactively, we now know that the balance of Imperium classics is very good, but not perfect.
Okay,
like we've found issues in it, but stuff that you need to play the game either very, very well or a lot of times to be able to reliably get it.
Right.
But now with Horizons, I'm involved in this side a lot more, so I can talk about the process of how we're doing it on Horizons now.
Yeah.
First of all, now we have the luxury of having reference data. We know, okay, so this is the sum power of the deck of the Celts, and they can score this much, and they have access to this and that. Therefore, if we put a card that is stronger than that and have access to it, etc.
And do you try to represent that like visually, or is it
intuition? It's. I tend to do systems engineering. I tend to keep things in my head and like try to not math it, but like heuristically estimate it.
Yeah.
So that my eyeball is like 85% there already.
Getting the feel for it,
Yeah. And because Imperium is already out and there are people who already love it and who've already played it a lot, we've managed to assemble a quite elite playtest group. So for Horizons, our top 4 playtesters, top 5 playtesters, including myself and maybe Nigel, maybe I'm 6, I don't know, I don't remember. But so our top 5 playtesters have over 600 playtests between them logged just for Horizons. So that means most of them are above 100 plays. Like I'm at 50-esque something.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I almost never play my own game this many times. So Imperium has really grabbed me. And at that point, we balance the games A, by data, B, because the people who play because these 5 people are just so good at the game that they can call out immediately when a card is imbalanced.
Right.
Because after 150 games, you can look at the card and say that card is better than that card.
Sure.
And in a way, that's most of game design to me as well. Oh, and not for Imperium. Well, every now and then I do that trick, but for like nice euros, nice trick I have is put it in front of either my partner Norali or my local gaming group, because both Norali and my friends have this amazing capability of not breaking the game, but like winning effortlessly.
Yeah.
and if you can use something in the game to win, and there is no reason why you wouldn't use it again next game, or you would always pick that first, or if that comes out, then we know that there's an issue there.
Yeah.
Or if you balanced it in a way that, most people usually get a 6 multiplier from this tile, but then that person gets a 15 multiplier from it, then you know that, we should have put a max 8 on it or something.
Yeah.
So it's by having a lot of experience playing these kind of games and then playing with people who are a lot better than me.
Yeah.
So start high, go higher.
Right.
That's the magic. Experience. And I always hate it because people ask for advice or wisdoms, and none of my wisdoms work for starting out people.
Right.
These are all methods that come from the fact that I've been doing it for 8 years.
Yeah.
So, and the last 5 of which I've been doing it professional, full-time, 180 hours a week if there are.
Right.
So,
Cool. But David, we had a topic up on our podcast some time ago about solo plays.
Yes.
And it seems like wouldn't necessarily call it a niche, but still an area of board gaming that we.
I mean, it is definitely a niche, but it is an ever-growing niche.
Yeah. Could you try and shed some light? And the thing is that you, of all people, name come up ever so often when we look at other games going, okay, so there's a solo mode here, or it says from 1 to 5 players. What's the one? Shouldn't that have been a 2 or something? And then your name comes up as the one who has done the solo part of a game. Please take our listeners into that realm in as few words as you possibly can.
10 minutes later. First of all, cool story. I am not a solo player myself.
Right.
I go bzzz a lot, and if the solo mode is too simple, then I'm bored. If the solo mode is too complicated, then I do everything in the wrong order because I want to do the next thing already.
Right.
Because like my brain is not necessarily too fast, but like too uncontrolled for resolving procedures.
The procedures, yeah.
But again, what's the secret? I get lucky. Many years ago, when we were selecting stretch goals for Anachron's original Kickstarter campaign, I was like, Viticulture just arrived and it had a big stretch goal about a solo mode.
Yeah.
Let's see what that's about. Let's see if we can do that too. And I believe Morten Mondet Petersen is he's also Danish, right?
Yeah.
So there, solo modes are essentially like modern solo modes are a Danish invention. Then
thank you.
So, because as far as concerned, what I do was invented by him, and I played Viticulture solo, and I went smart. I see it, but I like this less than playing Viticulture.
Yeah.
And of course, it was his first, so it's constructive criticism. He's a good friend of mine. We've talked over it a lot of times, so I'm not afraid to criticize Viticulture. And at the time, I wasn't doing it on purpose yet, but over the years, I've learned this design goal. Like, he laid down the rules of automa design, which is streamlined opponent, abstracting interactions. You never have to make a move against yourself, so there is never a pick whatever is the worst for you kind of decision. And there is a somewhat reasonably moving victory point target that you have to beat to win, instead of have 100 points to win or have more points than what you had yesterday. And I added a fourth or fifth or however you count it target for myself over the years feel as close to the 2 or 3 player game as possible.
Right.
Because historically, game designers have looked at the solo mode as a way to learn the game or a way to quickly play the game if your friends aren't around.
Yeah.
Whereas in this day and age, there are people who enjoy board gaming for the sake of board gaming.
Sure.
And whether they have people or have access to people or have time for those people is absolutely secondary.
Yeah.
They want to enjoy the board games because they want to enjoy the board game. They don't want to play video games. They want to play with their little cardboard pieces and their wooden meeples. And, both for reasons of inclusivity and for reasons of good business, I find it compelling to service this sector of our audience.
Yeah.
How did I end up being the solo guy? In 2018, I decided to quit my day job. I used to be a software engineer. Now I don't even know how to code a single line.
Right. No.
And I called around every single publisher I was working for at the time. And I said, look, guys, my some royalties for last year and my projected royalties for this year is enough to cover about two-thirds of the money I need to survive.
Yeah.
But I need to pay monthly mortgage and electricity bills, so I need a monthly income. And then they were like, okay, we are very happy to give you money because we love the idea of you going full-time because then you can do more stuff. But what can you do from each month that we can give you money for?
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I don't know. I can look at the games that the other people designed and develop them a little bit, or help you write the rule books. And then the first game that I got to develop was Teotihuacan.
Yeah.
And I was just finishing the work on Dice Settlers, which was one of my own, and target of inclusivity, let's have a solo mode, similar to Anachrony, it had. And I finished the Dice Settlers solo mode, I sent it in, and there was like 3 weeks left of Teotihuacan's development period, and I was like, hey guys, you're already paying me for this month to develop Teotihuacan.
Yeah.
Shouldn't I make a solo mode for it? It's like, and they were like, does anybody want it? It's a retail product. We don't have to sell on Kickstarter for solo.
Right.
Let's just put a solo mode in it. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
And then Teotihuacan ended up in the top 100. And then obviously Board and Dice went, sure, let's put a solo mode in all our heavy euros going forward because this is just good business.
Yeah.
And sure, Mindclash went, I did a solo mode for Cerebria, their new game at the time, which was a back-breakingly big work because that's not even a nice behaved euro. It was almost a dueling game.
Yeah.
But then by next summer, by summer of 2019, a few months after Teo and Cerebria came out, I started getting referrals. It's like people picked up on it because both Anachrony and Teotihuacan became known to the solo community as good solo first games, whereas I don't design solo games. I design good games, and then I design solo games that are not worse.
Yeah.
And because I got lucky that I happened to be around to do a solo mode for Teotihuacan, I'm checking my own list, what else I did back then that had a solo mode. Which year these games were. Blitzkrieg came out. I did a solo mode for Blitzkrieg on the train back from a convention. It's like in an hour and a half, while the day the Kickstarter started. And then we tested it out afterwards. Yeah, that's the other thing. Days of Fire, which had a cooperative mode, so that was solo playable on purpose. That was not a happy accident.
Yeah.
Days of Fire, Petrichor had a solo mode because I wanted to help my good friend Dave Kirkhope. So Petrichor, Anachrony, Dice Settlers, Days of Fire, my first 4 euro-ish games that all had solo modes. I always posted on Facebook or BGG asking for a few people to come help test.
Yeah.
As we moved, back then it was first Vassal, and then over the years it slowly became TTS. And there were 1 or 2 people who kept coming back game after game.
Yeah.
And after a while, I no longer asked for volunteers. I just sent an email to those people saying, do you want to come back for another game?
Yeah, that's a new run.
And here I am 5 years later. I have 4 people who basically are paid subcontractors of mine.
Right.
And they can design solo modes too, but I am still there as the brand, as quality control, as idea source if things run low. But
right.
There are solo modes coming out now-ish that I haven't even played the game. And it's not, we're not cheating, we're not lying, we're not, it's my, they explain the game to me, I lay down a theory, and then one of my lead devs, Nick Shaw, John Albertson, Dávid Bordes, or David Digby, goes away and does a thing, comes back, essentially presents it to me, and I say, why is that there? Why is that there?
Yeah.
I scroll through the rule book, and then it goes out with my name and their name.
Right.
Yeah. And it essentially quadruples my workload because I am taking jobs for 4 people, not for 1.
Sure.
But I've never looked at solo modes as my primary, like I'm a game designer.
Yeah.
I am a full-time game designer. Solo modes for me is like a self-marketing thing.
Yeah.
It's the fact that like I've done about a dozen of my own games and about 4 dozen solo modes for other people. So the job there is to have my name on 5 times as many boxes as I would have otherwise. So, which is what gives this impression that I have 20 games coming out every year. No, I have 1 or 2 games coming out every year, like any busy designer. But I have 5 solo modes coming out next to it, and because of that, my name pops up.
Yeah, I started thinking, when does David ever sleep? I mean, is he hyper?
I sleep a lot. I am lazy as hell, and over the COVID lockdown, like most of the Western world, I made myself go to the psychologist.
But COVID must have been a big thing for the world of solo playing. I think COVID must have sparked a lot of interest for solo games.
Oh yeah, definitely. Before COVID, we've seen 15 to 20% on Kickstarter and a few percent in retail.
Yeah.
Whereas after COVID, now we're seeing 10, 20% in retail and like up to 50% sometimes on bigger, heavier, more expensive games in crowdfunding for people who don't even look at the game if it doesn't have a solo in it.
Wow.
So again, it's not a special craze of mine. It's inclusivity and good business.
Yeah.
And there are 2 criteria: have a good game and don't make it worse.
Yeah.
So, and people ask me, what's the secret of good solo mode? Don't make a game worse.
Yeah.
Sure, there are games that are naturally better or worse fits. I like to talk a lot about games, and because of that, I end up creating these game design theories that I like to explain a lot of things. But then this feeds back to my own game design because when I look at the game, it's like, oh, everything would be so much better if this game would have met that theory, so that next time when I'm designing a game, I'm meeting that theory from the get-go, and then everything is easier. For solo modes, the most relevant thing to me is primary and secondary interactions.
Yeah.
An interaction is primary if I look at your stuff and make a decision based on that.
Yeah.
If I block you, if I attack you, if I take away something from you, I deny you doing something, then I do it so that you can't. And this is not the same as attacking, because anachrony or, careless, any worker placement, me putting my worker here, I am putting it here and not there so that you can't take it before my next turn.
Denying you the opportunity.
Yeah, it's a real interaction.
Yeah.
A secondary interaction is where I do something that happens to affect you.
Yeah.
Here's a card market of 5 cards. I don't know how you value one of them over the other. The game is not broken, so all cards have a roughly equal value. You buy one of the cards and I go, oh, screw you, that's the one I wanted.
Yeah.
That's a secondary interaction.
I was looking at exactly that one.
Yeah. So games that have no primary or secondary interactions, or just a few secondary interactions, can be very easily made into solo modes, but they tend to be boring solo modes.
Yeah.
That those games need low overhead solo modes so that you're done with them quickly.
Right.
Games that have a ton of interaction, but all of the interaction is secondary, can have really good solo modes, but those solo modes tend to be extremely complex.
Right.
Because I have to abstract all of those secondary interactions, because if I don't, I am worsening the game.
Anything particular in mind?
Tricarion is the best example of this.
Okay.
Tricarion has one primary interaction. Do I go to this location first or that location first, because it's a straight up worker placement thing, but has 200 secondary interactions. What do I pre-order in the market? Which specialist do I buy? Where do I place my trick marker in the theater? Which day do I reserve in the theater? How many times do I rotate the prophecies on Dark Ages? These are a million and they are all very smart secondary interactions. A secondary interaction is not necessarily bad.
Right.
I don't care secondary interactions are bad, but there are good secondary interactions. So, and Tricarion is an amazing example of a game that has a ton of secondary interactions, and most of them are really, really good. Which means that the solo mode is really good because it can give back all of these, but also incredibly complicated because it has to play with 20 little switches.
Yeah.
Whereas Anachrony, in comparison, has almost only a singular primary interaction. Not true, has a few others, but only one true interaction. I block this worker placement spot. So the one real job the bot has is to decide which spot to block from you and give you an indication of which spots it might block next turn, so that you can
at least play against it.
You can judge based on, I need to take this because if I don't, it will, and that will give it more stuff.
Yeah.
So games that have famously the best solo modes are the ones that have one very sharp primary interaction. Camben EV and Anachrony are both very good examples of this, and a few small secondary interactions, because that's very easy to model. Games that go wide are always a bit of, some people will love it and some people will go, I don't like running this huge bot. And I often hear some publisher or other designer coming to me and saying, I don't want one of your complicated bots. And I'm like, I don't decide how complicated the bot is. The game decides how complicated the bot is.
The bot plays the game. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Give me a game with no secondary interactions and the bot will be stupidly simple.
Yeah.
Well,
and you won't like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And if a game has only secondary interactions, and again, that doesn't mean that the game is bad. I mean, hell, Voidfall only has secondary interactions,
right,
other than the fact that every now and then you can attack somebody, but that happens in Voidfall very little. Then sometimes the game just says, this is not suitable for automa, because the only automa I would do would run itself and score points.
Yeah.
And that's boring. And in that case, in the past, I would have not done it. And exactly because of Voidfall, and it's my big project, and I couldn't not have solo for Voidfall.
Sure.
I learned how to design co-op-like opponents.
Right.
Ones that aren't automas, but survive the game while still playing the original game. And that's something I've never seen anybody else do. It was always either a survival game where you just do things to survive, or it's a Euro game where you have to beat somebody at the victory points. And I'm now dipping my toes into the Euro co-op genre, go left of Spirit Island, and I'm finding so many new design spaces, and I love it, and everything inspires more, and I go crazy and talk more.
Well, thank you, David. You are a plethora of knowledge and experience here. I'm guessing that a lot of our listeners haven't really tried, or as you said, dipped their feet in a solo play. What would, in your recommendation, be a good one to start with? If
they like heavy Euros, then I would definitely suggest to start either with Camben EV or Anachrony.
Yeah.
I'm just going to shamelessly recommend my own stuff because those are the ones I know.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why we have you.
If they want something really different, yet surprisingly simple, then I am really, really proud of what we've done on Railways of the World.
Yeah.
Because it involves laying rail tracks on a hex map.
Yeah.
Yet the bot does not have any flowcharts. And that is something amazing, because a year before that project happened, I could not thought that to be possible. Anytime there was spatial decisions to be made, there was, let's bring up the flowcharts, let's see. So when the bot needs to place something, how does it decide where to place it?
Yeah, but that's a software engineer inside you reverse engineering the problem.
Yes, Railways does not have a single flowchart.
Right.
And if you want something even lighter, but like just to see how, even when a game is simple yet deep, how fully a solo mode can give it back, although I expect people who don't already have it might find it expensive to purchase, is Foundations of Rome.
Yeah.
That was the first time I did a big bot for a light game.
Right.
And I showed my first draft to Emerson Machituti, who is an amazing designer, and he went, smart, but can it be more elegant? And that provoked me, and it got better, and then I gave once it was semi-working, I gave it to John and Nick, my two developers, and what they finished from out of it is, you get to play the whole game smooth. Railways is actually like a simplified version of the same action selection from. So
okay.
These are all within. So if you're dipping your toe into it, then for the big boxes, an Acronym or Kanban EV. For weirdos, Foundations or Railways. I'm looking at what else I would. For something completely different for the combat people, Undaunted.
Yeah.
I mean, that will have a lot of flowcharts, although the flowcharts are hidden in, like, they are not actual flowcharts, but they are flowcharts in logic.
Right.
But all 20-something scenarios of Normandy and North Africa can now be played against the bot. I did one scenario, the other 21 was David Digby, so big thanks to him.
And have you worked on Stalingrad as well?
No, I did not work on Stalingrad, because the problem with Stalingrad is that it has 15 scenarios, each of which have an increasing number of situations.
Right.
But the last scenario has alone 8 starting openers, which means and since for reinforcements, I think for those 22 scenarios we had to do 120 something large flowchart cards.
Wow.
And for this scenario use this card, and this card. And for Stalingrad it's not just 15 scenarios, it's 15 scenarios times those branches.
Yeah.
So it is closer to 40 scenarios essentially.
Right.
And which we would have had to map the bot to, because you can encounter any one path. And it was like the game is already a bit on the expensive side, and if you put another 200 flowchart cards into the box, nobody's gonna buy it.
Right.
So Osprey didn't even let us start, because just the component quote for the bot cards pushed the game out of the feasibility range. So they were like, nope, we're not doing them.
Okay, but David, as a final mark from you, what are the next? When will your name be relevant here in game design history class? The next time. You mentioned Voidfall is coming up, and what else?
Voidfall is coming.
I mean, it's always an asynchronous thing, because the things that you have worked on probably a year ago is now coming out.
Very much so. Voidfall is coming late spring, early summer. Then Imperium Horizons is coming second half of the year.
Yeah.
I can't say anything more certain on that. Development work is now on the very last % on that. But like, if you like Imperium, then you're gonna love Horizons. It's like everything that's good about classics and legends, but we both got 3 years better game designers.
Wow.
And we have a lot more testers, and we are inspired by the fact that, like, basically classics and legends have simple and similar civilizations and different and complex civilizations.
Right.
With Horizons, we now know how to make similar but complex and simple but different civilizations as well.
Okay.
Because we know the game so much better now. Yeah. Essentially doubling the content of the game. So I can't wait. I've been living that game. It's like whenever work has been too much, then I just went and worked on Horizons instead. So
on Horizon. And when is that coming out?
Second half of next year.
Second half of next year. Okay.
Besides that, work always continues on the next episode of Perseverance, because 1 and 2 have shipped to backers a few months ago.
Yeah.
But 3 and 4 is still coming. hopefully also second half of next year. We'll see. And then the big Euro game I co-designed with Simone Luciani is coming next Essen. It will be announced probably spring, as normally with retail games. And then I've designed the game with key series Richard Breeze many years ago that COVID has delayed, and we're hoping that he'll be able to finish it this year, as in for 2023.
Yeah.
So that will hope 2023 is my big year.
That's your power year.
Yes. All the big projects I worked on during lockdown are now starting to pop. So yeah. So, and then there are like 4 other projects that I'm not allowed to talk about, but those are more 24, 25-ish things than 23-ish. So, you'll see.
Okay. So we might actually make a quick agreement with you to check back during Essen 23, and then we'll make a recap on how the year went.
Please do.
Please do. But David, thank you so much for your time on it's a cold Thursday evening in Copenhagen. I don't know how.
I haven't been outside. I have too much work.
I haven't been outside for years, so
Yeah.
All right.
This was fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a lovely evening and talk to you some other time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Tak til David Turczi, og tak til Bo for endnu en fed introduktion til en international designer. Tak til David Turczi, og tak til Bo for at have fået legnet endnu et interview med en international designer op. Det er virkelig fedt. Find links til Davids spil på papstinenser.dk eller på www.papsco.dk/podcast. Der kan du også finde links til vores Imperium-episode. Husk, at du kan støtte Papstinenser på tier.dk, så kan du være med i lodtrækningen næste gang, vi udvælger en lytter, der kan vælge indholdet af en bonusepisode, som er gratis for alle. Hver en krone fra tier bliver brugt til hosting, bedre optageudstyr og promotion af brætspil som hobby. Du kan finde Papstinenser på Apple Podcast, på Spotify, på Podimo, eller hvor du ellers henter dine podcast, og så er vi også at finde på YouTube. I dag i studiet var Bo Jørgensen og David Turczi. Papstinenser er produceret af selv samme Bo Jørgensen, Christian Beckmann og Mike Ditlevsen. Mit navn er Christian Bak Petersen, og på vegne af hele Papstinenserholdet, så skal jeg sige godt spil derude.